Hi, my wife and I purchased a LeanTo wall-mounted Gazebo 160 from Summer Garden Buildings online. Now, I'll say right at the beginning, this isn't a box opening and live recording of the build as it happened, because that took 2 sessions for us, as my wife and I are not as young as we used to be. So if you're willing, there's no reason why it can't be completed in a few hours on one day. But for us, we did the main frame on the first day and then the fiddly canopy bit on the second day. But what I would say is you will need 2 people to do most of the build. The gazebo arrived the next day after ordering, which I thought was pretty good. It was well packed and it weighed 22 kilos. So what we did was, first of all, we checked the parts against the components list. That's their form YF3846, and you'll see from that there are 12 assembly diagrams on the reverse of the components list, but no accompanying text, which is one of the reasons I decided to make this video, which I hope you'll find useful in helping you build. I'm going to go through each of the assembly diagrams, but video the completed steps and explain how we completed the build and how we overcame any of the difficult bits. We used a table and sawing benches in the early stages to make the job of joining the stuff together a bit easier, but we had to use our lawn to finish off before mounting the unit to the wall. But it was a dry day, so it wasn't a problem. Now, the gazebo is approximately 8 4 inches, that's 2.55 metres high at the wall, and the front is approximately 7 5, which is 2.25 metres. The front projection is approximately 9 10, 3 metres. Now, it's possible to reduce those heights if you have an obstruction that prevents you having it that high by cutting off a little bit of the bottom of the pillars. But of course, if you do that, you're going to need to drill holes in the pillars in order to enable joining to the bases. So, step 1. First of all, you've got a couple of plastic decorative ends, and they go on crossbar E. These simply push in, but I needed to give them a little bit of a tap with a mallet as my hands are a little bit arthritic. Step 2. The decorative ends are also fitted to the upright pillars marked H1 and H2 on the diagrams, and again a small tap with a mallet may be necessary to push them home. Now there's a pulley cord holder marked I on the diagram, and that gets bolted to the pillar H2, and you've got a couple of screws there which are marked N for November. Then the pillars H1 and H2 are fitted onto the bases, U, with the supplied 15mm bolts. They're all P1. Now, it's worth mentioning at this stage that the diagrams suggest fitting the black caps R over the bolts, but I suggest only tightening the nuts hand tight at first, just in case they need adjusting, and then fix the caps at the end. We did need to adjust a fuse very slightly in order to get an exact alignment, but it works pretty well. So step 3 is where we present the crossbar E to the pillars H1 and H2, and then using the 45mm bolts P2, we bolt those together. Step 4. This is where we bolt on the cross strut A with the joining bracket M with P1 bolts. This is the cross strut that is left hand as you face the mounting wall. So we bolt on the cross strut C with the joining bracket K with bolts P1, and that's the cross strut that is on the right hand as you face the mounting wall. And then finally we bolt on the middle cross strut, which is marked B, again with a joining bracket with the bolts P1. Step 5. We join all 3 cross struts A, B and C to the wall mounting crossbar D, and again we use the P1 bolts. After that, we present the whole assembly to the mounting wall so that the gazebo is approximately 8'4" high at the wall and the front is 7'5". That makes the front projection about 9'10". Just slightly adjust until it's right. Then we've got to position a bracket R to the right hand of the wall mounting bar D and mark the positions of 2 of the expanding wall bolts, which are marked S, through the holes in the retaining bracket F, ensuring that the bar D is level. Just use a spirit level for that. You then would need to drill the 2 holes and fit the wall bolts S in the wall so that the sleeve of the bolts are flush with the wall. Then fit the mount F over the threaded bolt, add the washers and tighten the nuts. Then on the left hand side we've got to repeat that with the bracket R and then repeat in the middle with another bracket R. So you've now got the thing pretty stable bolted to the wall, but as I say, do make sure to use your spirit level. Step 6, we got to fit to the double card roller number 1 to the right hand pillar H2, and then fit to the double cord roller number 2 to the front crossbar E with bolts P1. Then the single cord roller 1 goes on the wall mounted bar D, again with the P1 bolts. You then thread each end of the cord V through the cord rollers number 1 at the right hand pillar H2. Now if you see on the diagrams you'll see that they show one end of the cord as black and one end as white. The black end goes up through the outer roller and the white end goes upwards through the inner roller. The black end is then pulled to and threaded through the lower roller of cord roller number 2 in the middle of the front crossbar. The white end is pulled and threaded through the upper roller of the cord roller number 2. Then the white end is pulled all the way to the wall and threaded through the top of roller 3 and pulled back to near the end of the middle bar B. So you've got your cord threaded. You'll notice there are 6 sliding pin bolts hanging from each of the 3 cross struts A, B and C. Now these will all be threaded through the 6 canopy poles L which go through the canopy. But in the meantime, step 8, we found it very useful to thread the outermost pin of the middle cross B through the 2 end loops of the cord V and fix that with a nut Q in order to retain the cord whilst we're fitting pins to the canopy poles. You know, when you've fitted all the poles, then you just have to take that off and fix the last pole through those loops. That'll be explained later. Step 9. We now need to thread one of the canopy poles L through the tunnels at one end of the canopy. The canopy ends are exactly the same at both ends, so it really doesn't matter. Step 10. Present this pole to the wall end and thread the fixed pin bolt through the left hand hole in the canopy pole L and then secure it with a nut marked Q. Then on the right hand side we do the same thing. We thread the fixed pin bolt and secure that with nut Q. Finally, we thread the middle fixed pin through this canopy pole and secure with a nut Q, ensuring that the pulley cord remains to the right of the pin as you face the wall. That's important later on, as it makes pulling the canopy back much easier. You'll note that the remaining threaded pin bolts are free moving and not fixed, and they slide up and down the bottom of the crossbars. So, thread a pole L through the next canopy tunnel and slide a pin bolt to the wall end and thread the pin bolt through the left hand side of the pole. Repeat that on the right hand side and on the middle. So now we simply repeat that process with all the remaining poles, and finally we need to secure the middle pin bolt of the final hole at the front. But first of all, remove the cord end loops from this last pin, thread it through the pole, and then through the loop ends, ensuring that the white loop is above the black loop, and then secure it with a nut Q. This last bit's a little bit fiddly as there's not a great deal of space to thread the loops as well as the nuts. Just needs a bit of patience. Step 11. Check that the cord pulley is moving the canopy backwards and forwards quite freely. Ours work fine, and there's no reason why it would stick unless the crossbars are out of alignment. It's unlikely if these instructions are followed, but it's why the bolt end cap shouldn't really be fixed until all is working, as some adjustments might be necessary. In any event, if you find it is sticking, do not under any circumstances use oil or WD-40 in order to ease the pulleys. The manufacturers state that's a big no-no. I actually used a plumb line from a bit of string and a spanner to hang down from each end in order to check the alignments of the pillars H1 and H2, and then slightly adjusted those before securing the base. Now our paved patio is slightly smaller than the projected depth of the gazebo, so we had to fix our bases onto our synthetic lawn, which has hardcore and sand base, but I'm sure it'll be fine with ordinary grass. There are 8 small tent pegs which are supplied, but frankly they're just tiny tent pegs and in my opinion just not up to the task. So we purchased some much longer heavy duty pegs from Amazon. These were 8mm diameter pegs, which is slightly more than the 7mm of the holes in the base. So I just got a drill bit and ease that in order to fit. These pegs really did the trick very nicely, and the bases are very secure. If you've got a concrete or a decking patio, then you'll need to secure the bases with anchor bolts or screws. So you can now tighten all the bolts where necessary and fit the protective caps on. I've left a link to Amazon for the bolts that we use to fix the base, and a link to Summer Gardens for the gazebo. I have to say we are very, very pleased with the gazebo and hope you found this video helpful.